I just want to run through all the patch notes really quickly. I want to read all of them off really quickly, and
Mhm.
then we'll give all of our thoughts and kind of like a summary of it at the end of like the more important patch notes. I don't want this to be a super long video like that last one was. That one was more of like a discussion video. Um,
Yeah.
Okay.
and I'll probably link that one in the description, or I'll make a little like thing for it at the top of the
Playlist of it.
video. Yeah, I'll make a little playlist or something like that. I don't know. But this one, I just want to run through the patch notes really quickly, and then we'll give our thoughts. Because I mean, I've already played this patch, so um, I at least have uh, a little bit of thoughts on it. So 0.8.4, Prime Helix and Raptors will now be on a global timer for all players. Very nice. Into the bug fixes, they fixed an issue with lane minions venturing into the jungle, fixed an issue with the gold pop-up when killing multiple minions at once to only show once instead of for each minion, and fixed an issue causing jungle camp timers to not be shown after taking the camp. Fixed an issue with gate scroll causing players to fall through the map. Fixed an issue with Muriel's R, which is which one of her abilities is that one?
That's her alt.
Well,
Her alt, okay. Fixed an issue with Muriel's alt, causing Muriel to move while channeling. Okay, I could have read a little bit further. Fixed an issue with Sparrow's alt, causing 3 arrows to hit a single target. I didn't actually realize that that was a bug. Um, I thought that that was intended because I saw that in. I was watching someone stream. I forget who it was. Um, Russ. I was watching Russ the gamer, and he was standing right in front of the raptor, and all 3 arrows were hitting, and he bursted it down so quickly because every single arrow was hitting the raptor.
it seems like it would be intended if you only have one target and you
Yeah,
want to.
yeah, and you were like
Mhm.
directly in front of it,
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
that would make Sparrow kind of overpowered, I think. Um, they balanced out Gate Scroll a little bit, reduced the gold cost on that, reduced the gold cost on the Sentry Ward. Interesting buff to the SOS. Health regen increased from 1.2 to 2, and mana regen increased from 1 to 1.6. Some balancing on mana muzzle. The silence and vulnerability duration was decreased from 3 seconds to 1 second. The silence and vulnerability cooldown is increased from 90 seconds to 150 seconds. So you're going to be able to use it less often and it's going to be less impactful. But they did decrease the gold cost of Mana Muzzle substantially to 1,800 gold from 3,000. Decreased the energy power just slightly, decreased the mana just slightly, and removed its mana regen. Um, into Gideon, they increased the projectile size of his right mouse button. That was the one where he throws his rock, not the one that comes from the sky, but the one that slows, correct?
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. So they increased the projectile size on that one and the radius of impact to make the ability feel more consistent. Um, Not mad at that. I'm happy that abilities are feeling more consistent. Greystone's passive, the cooldown was increased from 12 seconds, 10.5 seconds, 9 seconds, 7.5 seconds, and 6 seconds, respectively to 14, 13, 12, 11, and 10. So he's going to be able to deflect shots less often. And his Q damage was increased. The base damage was increased. I'm not going to read the full, numbers. They're all right here. But at max level, it was an 80% base damage increase over the duration of his Q. And a really interesting one here, his physical power scaling on that Q was increased from 30% to 120% over the duration. Um, that is a significant change, but we'll talk about that when we get to the end here. Um, on Grim, another nerf for Grim, and Kalari's nerf is a little bit further down. Ion Blast damage reduced, so that's his yellow mode, his basic mode. The damage on that was reduced again. The energy cost for that was increased, actually fairly substantially, and the travel speed was decreased on that one as well. His Acceleron Blast, I believe, is the red mode. That's his chase mode, like in engaging into fights mode. So that damage was increased, The slow was increased as well, and the range was increased. My guess is because nobody used the red mode. And
Yeah,
the
I think they were just trying to get people to kinda use the other
Yeah,
modes
yeah. So
maybe.
they buffed his red mode, but they nerfed his yellow mode as well. Because I mean, if I played Grim, I was pretty much only using yellow mode just for that. It did so much damage. It was such an easy poke. It was really easy to land. It had a really large radius, and it did a ton of damage. So, um,
Mhm.
all of this moving in the right direction for making Grim less annoying, but better in other places. Um, the cooldown on his deflect was increased. Again, making him like a little higher skill cap. You're not able to deflect stuff as often. And actually, fairly significantly too. 24 seconds at the first level is actually quite a long time compared to the 14 seconds that it was originally. Grux's pull, they increased the mana cost on Grux's pull. Um, and the shred and trauma on his cleave, the duration of that shred and trauma was decreased by 1 second. So I think Grux, when Grux came out, he was already in a pretty good place. Um, they just needed to do some small tweaks on Grux, which I think was just slightly needed. Um, Another nerf
Yeah,
on Kallari. This is the third nerf since Kallari came out. Reduced her base health so that she's not, the third tankiest hero in the game. And reduced her physical armor gain, not by that much, but by a little bit. Went from 3.2 to 3. They decreased the damage on her passive a fair amount. Um, so instead of 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, it's now 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25. This is evisceration is the damage when she comes out of her, or not the damage when she comes out of her stealth, the damage when she hasn't taken damage. I believe it's 6 seconds. If she hasn't taken damage within 6 seconds, that's the additional damage on her basic attack. Her Shadow Strike, her dash, the damage was reduced on that one, and it increased the cast and travel time speed, so it's going to feel a little bit more fluid. I felt that yesterday playing Kallari, and the damage on it was reduced as well. So not a huge nerf to Kallari, just small tweaking. Kwong, a huge buff for Kwong. His basic attack damage was increased, and his damage per level was increased quite a lot. If I'm not mistaken, Kwong now has the same damage per level as Sparrow, which is a little it's a little
Have to see
weird.
have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Um,
it makes the idea of a physical physical damage Kwong a little more,
yeah.
like,
Mhm.
Because what it
uh,
seems like they're doing with this balancing, because it is a buff overall, but they're increasing the mana cost on some of his abilities. They did decrease the cooldown on his E, so they increased the mana. Oh, they decreased the mana cost. Okay, I was looking at the wrong thing.
which
So
that cooldown reduction on the E is pretty big, like, it's
yeah,
Mhm.
really
yeah,
painful.
yeah. Um, so the mana cost on his Q was increased. So that was his throw sword, right? That's his
Mhm.
throw. Okay.
Mhm.
So they just increased the mana cost a little bit, not a crazy difference. Just small tweaking. They decreased the mana cost and they decreased the cooldown on his E. So he's going to be able to use that far more often. Um, and then the damage on his right mouse button decreased. The mana
Whenever
cost
whenever
decreased.
whenever the sword is thrown,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So he's going to be able to poke less often with that, throwing the sword, using the E, then using the right mouse button combo. In the offlane, it's going to be a little bit less annoying. Um, but they did decrease the mana cost on that. They also decreased the cooldown on that. So Kwong is using his abilities way more often now. Um, they decreased the shield amount on it. And this is kind of interesting that they're doing all of this for Kwong's abilities because it seems like in the last, 5 or 6 or so patches, um, Strange Matter has erred on the side of making abilities on longer cooldowns and higher mana costs, but making the abilities more impactful overall. So maybe this is a move to make Kwong a really low skill cap hero, is my guess. Because they're
I'm thinking it's a push to make him more of a less of a straight caster and more of
Hmm.
a hybrid where like you don't necessarily want to throw your sword every time. Maybe you want to run up on him and actually hit your
yeah,
E
yeah,
sword
maybe.
in hand type of thing. I
Yeah.
So
don't
that
know.
so that Kwong has a little bit more sustain in fights, that he can output sustained damage and he can um, you know, deal sustained ability damage without his cooldowns being on such long cooldowns. They increased the shield bonus health as well, increased the or duration reduced on his shield, and then they increased the radius with his sword in hand. Overall, a buff for Kwong. We'll see. I haven't played Kwong yet, so I don't know.
See,
Um,
like I said, it seems like it makes him a little bit more viable as just like a regular ability damage bruiser.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
Mm. That's kind of what the feel I got from reading through that was like they're making an effort to make him a bruiser
yeah,
instead of
yeah,
being just a caster.
yeah. All right, and then Muriel got another nerf to her shield. Um, that I think was the second nerf to her shield. They initially buffed the heck out of Muriel's shields when Muriel was useless, like a couple patches ago, a couple like full patches ago when they buffed Muriel's shield, and now they nerfed her shield quite a bit. I don't know if it's back to what it was before. Um,
I think it's still a little bit higher than what it had started at, but
okay. And then the last one is what seems like a fairly significant buff for Narbash. They increased the health regen just slightly at each level, by 1 at each level, and then a big buff to his ultimate. So the base damage was increased substantially. The energy power was increased, or the scaling when he builds energy power was increased as well, and the slow as well. So the slow on Narbash's ult is now consistent with the slow on Kalari's dagger at max level, I believe. I believe she still gets 50% at max level on her dagger. Um,
that ultimate increase on the damage and the scaling really
mhm,
makes it feel like before it seemed like if you were there, you had to use your ult and you were putting yourself in a really
mhm,
vulnerable spot.
mhm.
Whereas
mhm.
now you're still doing that, but it's almost more worth it because the
Yeah.
amount
Yeah.
of damage and stuff that you're gonna get out of it.
It also feels like it has the value that you would expect out of a channeled ultimate. Because
Mhm,
like Gideon's channeled ultimate has a lot of value, but you can get stunned out of it. So
mhm,
Narbash, of course, I mean even before this, Narbash would have to pick and choose when to use that ultimate so as not to
Mhm.
get stunned out of it. But it's a little bit more impactful now.
Yeah.
mhm.
I
And it feels
think
like to me this opens up more build options for him as well.
exactly. Yeah. The
Yep.
energy power scaling, the base damage
Mhm.
on that, all of those things. I think mainly the energy power scaling probably incentivizes you to build more energy damage.
Mhm.
And that
And I
energy
think
damage is going to help with that healing as well.
yes, yep, and that's the big thing that I think a lot of people still don't realize with Narbash is if you build ability damage, your heal, it's crazy how high
Yeah.
you can get your heal.
Yeah, it's scaled.
So,
The Song of My People scales with energy
mhm,
damage built. Um, so yeah. Um, other
And
than
you're talking
that,
you're talking Song of My People at level 2, base healing is 12 per half second, which if you take into account early game, you could have level 2 healing by what, maybe 4 minutes and 3 minutes into the game.
yeah.
12 health per every half second, 24 health per second. That's
mhm,
early game. That's quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
Not to mention if you throw in like 20 energy power, now you're
Yeah.
talking pretty significant.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of all realized that Narbash's healing was significant after that last change,
yeah,
and then when we all started to realize that his healing scaled with energy power.
mhm,
But I think the nerf to Muriel, the buff to Narbash is definitely putting Narbash in the forefront of supports right now.
Yeah, and I think you're still going to see you're going to see a lot of Deckers still,
Mhm.
but I think Narbash is going to be
I
he's
feel
going to be up there as
I
well.
feel like Decker falls off late game quite a bit.
All supports do because they're usually so far behind.
But Narbash's
The
healing
Narbash
can
has something,
compensate for that.
yes, Narbash has something that sets him apart from the other ones with
Yeah.
that his healing late game
Yeah.
still. If you invest the gold that you get into some energy power,
Yeah.
you're scaling. It's a nice thing to have late game in those team fights.
Yeah. Um,
Not to mention pairing it up with certain cards like Siren's Call, which increase your
mhm.
healing
Mhm.
and also give you energy power while doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
that type of stuff there will
Yeah, no,
definitely make him.
Narbash is definitely the prime choice for a support right now.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Um, if we're doing just a little summary of the main things, it's a really nice quality of life change that now the Prime buff and Reginald will now be on a global timer. So if the enemy team takes Raptors, um, you'll see that. You'll see the
You
timer
don't have
change. You don't
to
have to stand on it. Yeah.
you don't have to put yourself in a really bad position just to
Yeah.
check the timer.
Yeah, I mean, because there are like, hey, go stand next to the timer so we know when Raptors spawns, and you're putting yourself out of position sometimes for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Um, Gate scroll decreased. I don't really think that these are all that impactful. People didn't really use sentry wards all that much anyways because they can't
Mhm.
see Kalari, so and
Yeah.
they can just get killed.
When I thought sentries could, but they were always
But
visible.
yeah, you're right. The shadow wards can't see Kalari,
Mhm.
but the sentry wards
Yeah.
can, but they're always visible, so it doesn't matter
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah.
Yeah.
SOS buff is big, I think. SOS was already a great card. It's a must build for offlaners. It was already a must build, but now it's like if you're not building SOS in the offlane, you're throwing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm actually surprised to not see a little bit of a gold increase on the cost
Yeah, yeah,
just because so if you think about what you normally buy beginning of the game, you usually buy like a health or a mana pot and
yeah.
then stone. Whereas now that they've increased both the health and the mana regen, it almost seems like it would replace like if you're gonna buy it, you would need to replace buying that early game health pot or
Yeah, you
mana
wouldn't
pot.
buy the health pot. The SOS would be like 600, 600 gold, or you get 650 off the bat, so 650 gold. Maybe increase the health regen and the mana regen just slightly a little bit more, and then that's your early game card is your SOS. You don't have a health pot.
Yeah,
Mhm.
like that when you buy the stone SOS and a health pot, like I mean that's pretty much like you can almost guarantee outside of getting, ganked or rotated on, you're gonna be able to stay in lane that whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Way out sustain.
Yeah.
Um, Greystone's Q just seems kind of crazy now. 30% to 120%. The physical power scaling on his Q quadrupled
Yeah.
from
Mhm.
what it was.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens because I
Yeah.
mean that was always one of those things that we like from Paragon. He was technically like he scaled like a carry, so he was the first melee carry,
Yeah.
and it seems like they're kind of pushing him a little bit back that direction.
It's weird because yeah, I mean, well, cuz when we looked at the scaling of all the different heroes in that last video the last patch video that we talked about, where we were talking about the learn tab, and we were talking
Mhm.
about how Greystone, has the highest damage scaling and he has the highest
Mhm.
health, like just
No,
giving
his
him.
health was super low,
Oh yeah, his
remember?
health was
Yeah.
super low. Oh yeah,
For like no reason,
yeah. It it
other
f-
than
it feels weird that they're pushing him in this damage direction, um, instead of pushing him in the tank direction, which everyone like thinks that Greystone is.
Mhm.
well, I
Uh,
mean, it makes a little bit like when you see a Greystone, like an enemy Greystone, and you see him on the map and he's coming towards you, you're not thinking like, oh, like I got to be careful because he can put out damage. You're
yeah.
thinking like, I'm never gonna kill this guy.
Yeah,
Like,
Yep.
I'm not even gonna
Yep.
try. Yeah.
yeah. So I think now maybe it's like given that like don't just ignore him type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Like now he
Mhm.
can actually hurt you.
Maybe. Yeah.
In
I mean,
in a way, it feels almost kind of like they're doubling down, almost like it seems like the things that they changed with Kwong. It almost seems like it's kind of goes hand in hand with like Greystone,
Hmm.
that they're pushing him to be, I don't know if it's a perception thing or what, but to be more of the bruiser,
Yeah.
just instead of full tank all the time.
Maybe that was their intention from the beginning, was to not, I mean, nobody really expected literally every hero that was a melee character to be to almost have to be built as a full tank to
Yeah.
succeed.
Right.
So they're trying to give more options out of the side
Yeah.
of that. 'Cause I gotta be honest, playing a lot of melee characters, it gets pretty boring after building
Hmm.
tank over and over
Yeah.
and over.
Yeah. All right, here
But
we go. Here's my Balaam. All right, here we go. Here's my Air Graze Cataphract. Like,
Hmm.
yep,
just
yep.
same thing every time.
Veil armor, U mantle,
Yeah.
cataphract, PS, yeah,
It
snooze.
it seems like when I look at all these heroes, they changed up offlane a lot. This is the offlane meta patch pretty much, and then supports of course, Muriel
Hmm.
and Narbash at the end. So, um, as far as the offlane goes, I mean, I think Kalari is still going to be strong. She's always going to have that presence because of the global ult. If you're able to play her well, if you have that micro positioning within each team fight, and you have the macro positioning for the map as a whole, if you're able to play Kalari with good micro and macro positioning, you're still going to succeed. Um,
Hmm.
but
And
They
that's
they
what she
made
should be.
I
yeah,
like
yeah,
that I definitely like that they made her dash do less damage and be more of a,
a
like, dash
getaway. Yeah,
dash ability rather than, like, a offensive
yeah.
tool that you can also use defensively. It felt a little strong,
Yeah,
but, I mean, the base damage, like, wasn't
yeah.
reduced, like, a crazy amount, but
Other than
still.
that, I think Kwong, both Kwong and Greystone are going to be very strong in the offlane. I don't think that Grim is going to be viable in the offlane anymore with the damage that Greystone can put out, and just his passive in general, deflecting abilities or deflecting basic attacks. Sorry, um, and Kwong's lifesteal that's going to give him sustain against Grim. Um, and Kalari's burst against Grim, I don't think Grim is going to be a super viable offlaner anymore, like he
Well, not
was.
not to mention the almost double in cooldown on his deflect shield, like,
Yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
good.
Hmm.
yeah.
I think they may have overdone it with Grim. Like,
I
I
I
don't feel
agree.
he's
I
not.
agree.
I don't think he's even going to be a good choice for a carry.
I
The
I
role that
f-
he's supposed to fill.
I felt like Grimm's damage, at least before this patch, and even I mean after this patch, I felt like his damage was weirdly spread between basic attack damage and ability damage to the point where in late game he didn't do enough basic attack damage to be a good carry, even if you built him all red, and he didn't do enough ability damage to be a caster, even if you built him all blue. And if you split in between,
Yeah.
he was even worse.
Mhm. That's true. And the one thing that he had going for him is the energy damage, and, like, he does both. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if you're in normal yellow, what is it, ion mode, you have your basic attack, and then you have your, little bomb, your little orb.
Hmm.
The orb was energy damage, so, like, that was kind of the good part about having Grim in the carry, is, like, you had energy damage and physical damage, but now it
Hmm.
almost just doesn't seem, it seems
Yeah,
kinda pointless.
yeah.
Yeah. And with doubling his right mouse, I mean, like that was his getaway, or that if
Yeah,
a Kalari ults on you, you can at least bring that up and
yeah,
block something. But like now with doubling that, you have to be extremely careful with how you use that.
yeah. I like that they increased it. I think they increased it a bit too much, is what I'll say. I like that they
Mhm.
increased it because Grim is supposed to be a higher skill cap carry. He's supposed to have those, like his deflectability is inherently like a difficult ability to get value out of. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that having it on a longer cooldown is good from what it was, at least. 8 seconds at max level was far too frequently. Um, but I think that 24 seconds at first level is far too infrequently now.
Makes it a lot easier to early game get behind as Grim,
Hmm.
like, without your protection and
Yeah,
also without dealing near as much damage on your abilities as
yeah.
before,
Mhm.
His
which I
poke,
guess
his
that
poke is
kinda
still
does.
gonna be there though.
Yeah, and I guess that kinda does go kind of in line with what the carries kind of are right now, where early game they're not much, but later game is when they kind of flourish. But
You mean early game they're not much, and then later game they're still useless? Unless you get all, every single raptor, and unless you're super fed, your carry is just absolutely useless.
yeah,
Is that what you meant? Did
at
you mean to
least
say that, Killswitch?
that was silent at the end.
Yeah.
No, but I was trying to find here real quick. I was trying to find Grimm's base energy that he starts with, or like his max energy, which isn't it like 200 or something like that? Like that.
Yeah, no, yeah, he always has 200 energy. That doesn't scale throughout. That doesn't change throughout the game. He always
So,
has 200 energy. Yeah, so
y- y-
they increased his energy cost on that first level to 160. That's using
right.
almost all of his energy.
Where I was gonna go with
Mhm.
that too is that I was looking at that. They made his bomb cost 160, and his right mouse button, I believe, costs at first level 50. So you wouldn't even be able to cast them back to back if you needed to, which
Not
had the
directly back to back. You would wait at least a second for that 10 energy to drip back in, but yeah, not directly back to back.
which means like early game level 1 on both those abilities, you're talking if you get a gank from a jungler, from the enemy jungler, you cannot basically protect yourself.
Hmm.
Like you can't cast you can't block that incoming ability and then push them off with your displacement bomb.
Yeah.
Makes it kind of interesting.
All right. Well, there was a fair amount of balancing in that patch, and I think we covered it pretty thoroughly. We covered, um, what they did to Grim, what they did to Kalari, what they did to off lane, what they did to supports, the small, bug fixes, quality of life changes, and then we covered the balance changes for everyone. So I think that's going to wrap up the video. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts on this patch. If you disagreed with anything you said, drop it down in the comments. I'm always happy to, have constructive discussions about the game. That's what we want, is constructive discussions about the game. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.
Later, guys.